Let me know when to start. Yeah. All right. Well, welcome. It's Monday, June 13th. Hey, Kina, come on in. Welcome to our class on how to handle a shifting market. Like I said, last month, Pat and I were talking, and one of the things we really wanted to bring to our agents is just how to handle a shift. And I guess, before we dive in, if you guys just want to introduce yourselves real quick, who you are, how long you've been in the business, why don't we start there? So I'm with Pat Lowe, and well, start with Pat. We'll start with Pat.
Okay, I'm Pat Lowe. I've been here at Keller Williams since we opened in 18, and I've been in real estate since 1985. In Wayne, always in Wayne.
Okay.
I'm Tim Waller. I joined the Keller Williams family in April 2022. I was licensed in 1983, and I am the grandpa of real estate.
I love that. So 85 and 83. So that's what, 40?
No,
30,
30.
I'm bad at math. But 30 some years. But so you guys have seen pretty much good highs and lows.
Yeah.
So I guess to start, when we were talking last month that you noticed that things are shifting, what do you look for when you think of the word shift? Like when you said on May 19th, you said you felt the market started to shift. I know we joke about that, but that was the day that you felt that was when you felt the shift. What did you that made you think that things were shifting?
I think the first thing was, were you last couple of years, multiple offers on everything, 5, 10, 20 offers. I would have got 20 offers before, might have been getting 5. Then I had another house that I had 100 people in and got 1 offer on it. So that was scary. And then besides that, like then people started pushing back at home inspections and doing things that they said they weren't going to do. Like everybody was waiving appraisals, limiting inspections. Everyone was all signed up for that. And then as the process started moving along, they start pushing back. And people committing to houses and bailing and turning everything at once. It seems like everything at once, right?
What about you, Tim? What are you noticing that maybe makes you feel like we're shifting a bit?
Well, I noticed a lot of things, Matt, but my career in real estate, I've been through the good, the bad, the ugly. This market has been simply apocalyptic. And I just see buyer sentiment starting to change. And I think what you see, what's going on in the stock market, because I read a lot of financial news and stuff like that, because I've been through this so many times. And the best advice I can give agents right now when you are going through this shifting market is to really learn the magic behind being able to articulate numbers, because interest rates and it's affecting everybody's pocketbook. Not like you're buying a $200,000 house anymore. I think the average sales price in Wayne, I just did it was like $659,000. So every time the interest rate goes up, and if you're borrowing $400,000 or $500,000, that rate's going to bump up quite a bit. And sometimes it can pull someone right out of the market from being able to afford to buy a home. But I think it's buyers' attitude. I think they're getting a little more where they're not bending on the appraisals as much. They're being more nitpicky, as Pat said, on the inspection. So,
well, and I love what you said. Definitely knowing your numbers. We're going to dive into a little that in a little bit. I think when we're talking about our numbers, one of the things that kind of shows that we are heading to a shift, I believe. I read a stat maybe last week, the week before, that nationally the average number of days on market is going up, and the number of price reductions is also there. So we're getting to where that kind of that crosses. Yeah. So that's where when you start looking at some of those numbers, you do start to notice that there is the shift. We talked about shift. The shift book written by Gary Keller. He says that it goes gradually and then suddenly. So, you start to feel it gradually, but then when it happens, it'll happen suddenly, which is why we wanted to bring a class like this to all of our agents. And it's also why at the sales rally next week, we're also going to be digging deeper into that. So I guess to start, whether it's the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, whether it's the Shift book, it all starts with mindset in terms of getting through a shifting market. So, a lot of times when people hear the word shift, they think of a negative, they look at that as a negative connotation, kind of panic mentality. So just to start, how do you overcome that temptation to maybe say, okay, it's a shifting market, this is going to be a negative thing. You guys have experienced a few markets now. How do you maintain that positive mindset to help tackle a shift?
I think it's educating your sellers and educating people about it. It's, I'm not afraid at all of market shifting, and everybody that I speak to, you know, like Tim and other people that have been in the business for a while, we're almost welcome at this point.
What are you, Tim?
Well, I carry on what, or add on to what Pat had said, is that I look at as shift as positive, and then any negative situation, if you dig deep enough, you can pull out of the positive. The positive is having the knowledge and always hungering for more knowledge, means that there's going to be less competition as far as real estate agents go. And that's where the true professional will shine, when they know their market statistics. They understand what the buyer's needs are. They understand what a seller's going through. For instance, in a shifting market, when the market trend starts going down and you have more appointments on price reductions, less offers. When an offer would come in, I would let the agent present the offers. I don't want to be the bad guy. Let them hear from somebody else. Then back in the old days, we asked the agent to leave the room. Someone would say, "We'll counter them at this." I said, "Okay, before we bring the agent in, I want you to sign this price reduction, because I want to leverage your price reduction against this buyer." And then
What's a price
Yeah,
reduction?
detail that.
There's agents who
Yeah.
probably haven't even heard the word price
Exactly.
reduction.
Exactly, right?
There's been so many years that I've had to adjust down off
And the agent carried on 300 brokers. They're tired, they know what it's like.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
But basically, by doing that, now you've got a more saleable listing. Because let's let the rest of the real estate community and the buying community know, hey, we're willing to offer our house at this price. And it puts more pressure on that buyer to come up to meet that counter offer.
Good, and I think one of the things to echo both of your points, there are always going to be people who thrive at a really high level during and emerging out of a shift. I look at even from a brokerage level, Keller Williams really launched itself out after the 08, 09. I don't know exactly how many agents there were at that time, but then they almost tripled in size. I want to say about 50,000 now. We're at about 170,000, and a big part of that is because during a shift, you do have to hone in on your skills. You have to know your numbers. You have to be willing to have conversations about, getting a price reduction, maybe having signed the paperwork in advance.
Hard conversation.
The hard conversations. And most brokerages aren't teaching that. So when you look at 08, 09 coming out of that, Keller really thrived because we are having those conversations. And so I think in addition to just having that positive mentality, it's also just make sure you're in the right conversations.
Just to give the agents a little warning. Every time my wife used to see me grab a sleeping bag, she would say, "You want another price reduction?" I would dig into it a lot.
Well, and so kind of to move to shift gears a little bit, as we're talking about shift, we'll shift gears. A lot of what Gary talks about in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent and also the Shift book, there is a lot of parallels and correlations. It's about getting back to the basics and getting back to the fundamentals. So what are some ways that you guys get back to the basics and ensure you're providing the same standard of service to your clients during a shift that you are when there's not a shift? What type of basic fundamental tactics are you guys?
Well, actually, I think, and Pat can agree or disagree, but I think in a shifting market, it's a little easier to get listings than it has been, right? And that's where agents can really differentiate themselves by educating the seller how you're better off pricing below the curve rather than chasing the curve, because then when the market trajectory is going down, that means you got to be more aggressive with your pricing curve. And I just think sellers appreciate during that time. I always go in with a lot of data, a lot of numbers, and I'll ask them questions. And I say, I'm not doing this to be personal, but I need to understand what your monthly financial obligation is right now and what it's going to be where you're moving to. So then I can show them the difference by them staying here, that they're how much money they're losing every month. My brother, who's a psychologist, God bless him, he told me if you want to change someone's thought process, you take that monthly obligation and you multiply it by 120 months, 10 years.
Give them some pain.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I call it financial pain.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's almost like shock value.
Well, and it's powerful because I feel like a lot of people in a market like this might say, you know, as a buyer, you're gonna say, well, I'm gonna wait, or as a seller, you're gonna say, you know, I want to wait till things cool down or settle down. And so when you're educating them with, okay, well, this is what it could look like 10 years from now if you don't do it.
It's not, it's almost scary, and it could be reality, you just don't know. But the reality is that every month that goes by that they stay in that house, it's like they're driving down the parkway and just letting all those $100 bills go. They're
Out the window.
actually every month withdrawing money out of their account rather than being able to deposit that. And I show them that savings, and I've had great success by you. Method.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot about educating the sellers and just being honest. You're upfront and honest with them. I got a call today on a house that I sold 20 years ago. And he moved to Florida and he called and he said, so is the market still hot up there? I said, I wish you called me 6 weeks ago and asked me that question, because I'm gonna give you a whole different answer than I would have given you a month ago right now.
So with that, like what type of, and I forget if this is a question for later, but I'll just ask it now, because like, what type of numbers and data are you looking at right now? Like if someone, you know, because you're right, I feel like every day it is changing. So when someone's calling you, like, what are you looking at each week, like in Maine, or what are you looking at? Like, what are some market statistics that you're looking at?
I always track inventory, and I always track, I try to do overall inventory and then just single family homes, if I'm working on a single family home listing. And this way I have data saved that I can show people what it was 3 months ago, where it is today. And right now, the inventory is starting to swell. And that's usually indicative that, you know, when we've been on a trajectory straight. So when that rocket ship runs out of fuel, it just doesn't come down. It's kind of a slow period.
Yeah.
It flattens and then it starts to descend. And I think we're right about here.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I think one of the challenges right now is if you don't really know the market that you're in at the time, you're gonna look at what's closing and what's happened that's closed. That news is 2 months ago, 3 months ago. You have to really look at the under contracts, and then you have to kind of be a little analytical about it. Say, all right, so when under contract, it took 30 days to go under contract. Ooh, that's a long time in this market. Maybe they didn't get their price, or it went under contract in 7 days. And it, you know, it never hurts to call, and if you're going on a listing, to like look at your best comps and maybe call that listing agent. And they may tell you, they may not tell you, but just to say, hey, you know, it just, you know, looking at something in your neighborhood, did you get over the price? Did you get near the? Because right now we're in a window, I'd say, for the next 45, 60 days where we don't know what there's right now, but we just do know from the activity in the market and the way that buyers are reacting that there's change.
Mhm. How often are you guys on the MLS, like looking in?
Oh, hundreds of times a day.
Yeah.
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 I actually fall asleep with it.
Yeah.
Wake up.
You wake up to it.
Shower with it.
Yeah, literally. Okay.
So it's something you have to constantly be on, because again, knowledge is only power when it's put into action.
Yeah.
You sit and read books all day long, but if you don't take the knowledge from that book and actually put it to practical use, that knowledge isn't
Yeah, you're not utilizing it. You're just sitting on it.
correct.
Yeah. So, you know, when we're also talking about, you know, the buyers and the sellers and their motivations, you know, ultimately between, like we were saying, there could be buyers that are saying, let's wait till it cools off. Maybe sellers are saying, you know what, should I list now? Should I wait? What do you guys do to find those truly motivated buyers and sellers? Are there any questions you ask them? Because otherwise they could be wasting your
Oh,
time.
absolutely. The first question I ask is, where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna go? The motivation is so important in
Key.
this, because the last thing you want to do is be taking a listing right now in a market that might be going down, to having people with their expectations being here, the reality being here. And then the truth of the matter is they're gonna call you a couple hundred times a day to ask you what's going on, what's going on, what's going on. And
And my
that's,
neighbor sold it for.
yeah. And that's all about managing expectations too, in the way you run your business. Like there's certain things that we do on certain days of the week.
Yeah.
So like we don't we try, and we started doing this before the market got crazy. We try not to be held hostage by the sellers with them being able to call you, 5 times a day to ask you questions. Like we do our feedback on Monday. You'll hear from us on Mondays. On Mondays, we'll follow up with everyone that's been in the house. We'll follow up with the open house. We'll follow up with the people that came with the agents with the open house. But if anything happens within that week, believe me, we'll let you know. Like if there's an offer comes in and we have questions or stuff, but because you don't want it in a market like this, in any market, you don't really want the seller, as soon as somebody leaves the house, calling you up, say what they think. Because then you're going to call that agent up. If you're calling them for feedback 5 minutes after they left, you're kind of showing your hands that you might be getting a little desperate here. So.
I like that, yeah.
Well, I'm always of the mind belief that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so
Yeah.
we have to be better listeners than we are speakers. So I ask a lot of questions and I'll listen to what their needs are because I can't supply benefits, of course, unless I know what the needs are. But I think setting expectations from the onset is important. And as Pat said, motivation's key with everything. Seller says, "Oh, but I got my price not moving." Okay, I guess you're not moving.
Yeah.
It gets to a point that when you get to that shift and when it starts to get maybe a little ugly, that's where the true professionals are really going to shine.
And also, I worked for my father for almost, 20 years, my first 20 years in business. And my father used to say, if they don't have a problem, you better give them a problem. Like, because if they don't have a problem, they don't need you. You're here to solve their problems. So whether it be they own 2 houses, the kids out of college, they're having a baby, whatever it is, you got to talk to them enough to find out what the problem is, because inside their problem is their motivation.
And being the real estate professional, obviously, if they need support, look, we can all look at TV or online, read articles, but it's our job in the real estate industry to really parse that out. I love what you were
Around the
saying.
streets.
Yeah, exactly. Be able
Yeah.
to say, look, yeah, you could price it here, and this is maybe what your neighbor got it for, but in this market right now, you're probably not going to get that. So it's being able to have those honest conversations, and if they don't end up listing with you, then look, you don't want an overpriced listing. It's
Yeah,
gonna sit there anyway.
And that's when we always say, you wait 6 months, I'll get it the second time around once they got a taste of reality.
And there's always one question I ask an owner, and it has to do with get unemployments, right? You think you're going to get it, and all of a sudden, they, well, we're going to sell it on our own.
Yeah.
So my last question to them is, Mr. as a seller, when I come back and we go over all the data, do you plan on selling the home on your own? And they don't know why I'm asking that question, and they're very honest. And if they're going to sell it on their own, they're going to say yes. If you don't ask that question, don't be upset when you got physicalized.
Physicalized.
That's a new word.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny because in the market that we've been in, you're not seeing as many FSBOs because, by listing your house with an agent, you're getting more people in the door, therefore getting more offers. And so they're not really leaving money on the table in the increasing market where that could change.
Right. And I think one of the areas where you guys can really help any client or especially a seller is, we mentioned before, pricing ahead of the market. So do you guys have any seller pricing strategies or tips you can offer to convince sellers to price ahead of the market?
I have one right now that we went under contract the middle of May, and then it just officially fell apart at the end of last week, went back on today. So we listed at 550, we got 590. They've already bought a house from us and closed, so they're in a little bit of a bind. If we go back on it, I'm already getting what's wrong with it. We're already getting that because that's natural that you're going to get that. So in order to try to compensate for that, we hit the price good. We came back on at 5.25 for it. And because I had that conversation with them is that, we have a problem. We have a problem right now. The perception is that because in this market for something to come back on, the perception is there's something wrong with the house. So, fortunately they listened to me, and I think they listened to me because they are motivated and they do own 2 houses right now. So we just went back on for $25,000 less than the previous price, $65,000 less than their accepted offer. And how many showings did we get? We probably have half a dozen showings already today.
6.
Yeah, we got a good, just going back on. So, that's the example of they had to get under the market, so, and they also had to be okay with getting 5.25. Again, it's a tough pill to swallow.
Well, I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
that's a tough conversation to
Yeah.
have with people who you listed, you got over asking.
Mhm.
And it seems like, okay, great, but now 2 weeks have passed and you're like, okay, having those tough conversations.
But the other flip side of it is, so we go back on the market at 550. We're not gonna get the activity. We have to find a way to get the activity that we were getting 8 weeks ago.
I just say if I don't sell it,
Guarantee, right?
base that was line that you can use is say, I got really good news for you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I could never underprice your home. The
That's
market,
true.
no matter what you're doing, will never allow me to do it. It
Mhm.
will, however, allow me to overprice.
Write that one down. Say that again, but sorry, I like that a lot.
Good.
I forgot what I said. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the good news is the market will never allow me to underprice your home. The way the free market works, if the consumer sees the value, they're going to buy it. However, the market will gladly allow me to overprice it. And I don't think we want to do that, do we?
Because the truth is, before 2020, we had bidding wars.
Yeah.
So it's not like this is something brand new.
Yeah,
I mean, this has always been,
It's all about price, right?
it's all about price.
Value, price,
It's
time.
that price. You know, fear of loss is a better motivator than fear of gain. So you price something at a value price and you have people coming in and they see other people waiting outside or they're going to showing time and they can't get in that day. They got to wait till the following day. Now, all of a sudden, everybody wants what somebody else has. So that's the reality of it.
And Matt, I've already put together what I call the value priced home bill. So when that ship, when that rocket ship starts to descend downward, I will let everybody have access to it.
good. That's a teaser for a future class.
Yeah.
You guys are dropping a lot of nuggets. Fear of loss, more, better than fear of gain. This is awesome, awesome stuff so far. Now, is there anything that you guys do differently to stand out from the competition in a shifting market?
Well,
Holy kidding.
I sometimes walk around with shorts and knee socks. My foot candles,
Yeah,
with a safari hat on. They remember me. I'm just kidding.
no, I think like it's something that as long as your standards or your standards of service, like that they're not changing, I feel like
I feel like
that's
they change.
good.
I mean, I think we still do, at least I still do what I do. And I'm calling people, I'm following up with people. I don't think that really changes, but I'm giving them more timely news.
Yeah.
Right now.
Everybody has to have a go-to value proposition
Mhm.
that's going to differentiate yourself from the competition. Whether that is whatever you come up with.
Yep.
You need a go-to, because a lot of times, right, you're on appointments. Well, the other agent said they're gonna do this, and that. Sure, we all have the same tools, but it's who understands those tools the best and gets the best production out of those tools. That's the difference. Same thing, every surgeon uses a scalpel.
Mhm.
Some of them just cut straight
Yep.
than others.
Well, and it's how the information is communicated to
So
someone else.
I would use a lot, I used it a lot in the last downward market we were in. I called it the appraisal value proposition. Where I would say, hey, look, if you don't believe that the facts that I'm putting before you, which is the same facts the appraiser is going to do, then by all means, let's get a licensed professional appraiser out here and tell him, look, we want to sell this. What's the value? What someone buys it, what will we not have the value come in at the appraised value? What would that be? And I tell the seller, say, look, if you use my services at closing, I'll reimburse you for the cost of that appraisal. And I would offer that to everybody. And a lot of people took me up on it. So the appraisal of the professional appraisal actually helped price that house.
I think I'd be hesitant of doing that until we start getting some lower closings.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yes. But that illustrates right there, though, they have a plan. Like when you're going in, you have an idea of what you want to deliver, what you want to communicate. And one of the things that I always tell people, and kind of echoing Tim, what you just said, you want to know what your unique value proposition is. And some of you have heard me say that if you don't know what your unique value proposition is, then someone's going to communicate their value proposition better than yours. So if you don't know what that is, think about when people say, hey, Pat is blank or Tim is, what are some adjectives that people describe about you? Write them down and formulate a value proposition around that in conjunction with why KW, why me, why our office. That's that in conjunction with understanding who you are and being able to communicate that is really huge. And I think, and I'm looking at Nalini, we were on the growth call today, and one of the things that Jason Abrams said, which I just wanted to mention, is like, you don't, and they talk a lot of us in the shift books, they talk about, look at your expenses when you're heading to a shifting market. But this is related to where he just said, you don't cut an expense that adds to your value. And I think when we're talking about, your value proposition, what it's like, and not stopping doing the things that are making you you, which is kind of in essence, like, do you do anything differently? No, because you guys have a set level of standards, you know what you're doing, you're going in with precision, and you're doing it. And so I think that, there's always a shiny object that we all look at, but just make sure you understand who you are is going to be the best way to communicate your value.
Yeah, I think especially in this market now too. I mean, we in this office are on top of the shift. And it was you and I were talking
Yeah,
before,
yeah.
like, I don't remember any other office ever being on top of a shift before. It was like, it kind of happened, right? Like been with other offices, like it happened and it was almost looking in the rearview mirror 3 months down the road.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is you're going to be going on listings now that people are still going to be pricing for
Their neighbor got.
April, yeah, from April 2022, when the reality is we should be pricing for what, August 2022.
Yep.
And what I always tell people when I first meet them is, I'm not good. I ask for permission for me to be honest with them. Can I be honest with you? And 100% of the time, people will say, yes, please, please. You know what? And that gives you the options to now you can lay it out for them, because I always ask permission first before you start going in there and saying, this and this, because there's always in any market, there's always going to be somebody that if a house is like this, they price it here. So we've been able to do that for the last 2 years because the pricing has caught up. So maybe it didn't sell. Maybe you price it too high. And it's not going to sell within 2 weeks. It's going to sell within 6 weeks. And how many listings have you seen in the last year that were almost ready to expire? And then all of a sudden, highest and best in the comments. So you couldn't go wrong. You couldn't make a mistake.
Because the market eventually caught up.
Yeah, the market caught up to it. That's it. That now it's the other way around. It's the other way around. Yeah. So let those people go out there and let them get them. And then you go back second time and say, yeah, Pat did come tell me the truth. This is kind of what she
Right.
said. Yeah.
They just didn't want to hear it.
And then their pain is a little worse 6 months later.
Good. Now, we talked a little bit about this, but I wanted to come back to this part because Gary Keller always talks about being the local economist of choice. And that's critical, especially as a new agent who's maybe new to the business. So what are some stats and information that you feel like people talking to an appointment need to know, whether that's maybe average days on market in a town? And we talked a little bit about this, but is there anything else you guys want to, because you always talk about going in and being armed with numbers. What do those numbers look like?
Well, I kind of work it also with the buyer, so I want to know what the cost per thousand is. So I usually would carry around an interest rate card, so I don't have to go, and I can just look at it and I can show the seller that if interest rates go up 0.5 percentage point and they're borrowing XYZ, their payment's going to go from here to here. And I don't know where I heard it, but I heard that when an interest rate goes 1% higher, it will take 1 million families from being able to qualify. And I think you got to understand all the various ways there are of financing, such as ARMs are going to start becoming very popular. Especially the 7-year, they're going to start becoming very popular. You need to be able not only to effectively communicate that to the buyer, but bring that same knowledge to the seller. And when the sellers say, because I've looked through it, well, what are you kidding me? I'm only going to get this. When they ever got that was last year. This is now.
Yeah, but they haven't said that in the last 2 years, have they? Tim?
No, they have not.
They forgot about that.
Yes. I stopped to remember. And the other thing now, as interest rates are starting to go up, and secret, this is what I used to do. I would tap into the mortgage people that I did business with because they would keep records. I think New Jersey MLS has it on there, whether it's an FHA or a VA loan, a lot of people don't know, there are some
Yes,
loans.
Yeah.
So anybody bought prior to January 2022 has got a really, really good interest rate, historically low. Eventually, when they sell and rates ever go up to 6.5%, 7%, and you can assume someone's mortgage at 3%, that's a gold mine. If you can tell the seller that, I have a way where I'm gonna get you more money. This is how it's gonna do it, just by having that knowledge. Now, a veteran loan, if another veteran assumes that loan, that the original veteran gets his VA eligibility back. If a non-veteran assumes that loan, that veteran who owns that home doesn't get his eligibility back until that mortgage is paid off. FHA is totally different, doesn't matter. But those two mortgages are assumable mortgages. So if you start doing research now, finding all those people that bought prior to 2022, start lining them up.
Well, I like that point too, because, I mean, one of the things that we're starting to hear already, we're gonna hear more of, people have, I'm paying 3% right now on my mortgage. I don't wanna step up to
You
pay,
know what I
to
say?
pay 6%.
Don't you need a higher tax rate?
And there you go. But I mean, that's what, there's those people are gonna be coming out of the market, but you know what? People always have to buy and sell a house. Life happens.
No matter
People
what.
get married, they have babies, they get divorced, they die. I mean, there's so many things. Like, how many people have you spoke to is like, I really, like, now, in the last couple of years, everyone pushed their plans out. So maybe they were gonna retire in 5 years and they did it now, or maybe they were gonna, wait till the kids got out of college and they got them an apartment and they did it now, like, but that's gonna change back, because life happens, and sometimes it's not the perfect time to sell your house, but it's the time you have to sell your house. And those are the people that you need to stay in touch with.
And it's a good time also to start contacting absentee owners.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, the
Letting
one
them
that called,
know, hey, this is what we can get now. I don't know what you're gonna get 6 months from now.
well, the one that called me today, he moved out of his house during COVID. He went to
Yeah.
Florida.
No.
And he says, how's the market there? I said, well, she called me 6 weeks ago and asked me that question. So that's fast tracking them right now.
And a lot of people don't have the luxury of time. They may get a job transfer. Right? Like Pat said, maybe
Mhm.
someone died, maybe someone's going through a divorce. Maybe they lost a job, they got financial problems. So there's always buyers and sellers.
Always.
In my 38 years, I've never seen a time where the market went previously.
Yeah.
Good. No, a lot of good information there. One other topic I wanted to chat about is in other shifting markets, getting from under contract to closing is definitely a little bit more challenging.
Mhm.
So what are some ways that you bulletproof the transaction once it goes under contract to ensure the transaction gets?
Like making an offer they can't refuse.
We,
Very Godfather of the other.
we follow up like crazy, like annoyingly crazy, but I've done that in every market. Like, we have a board in our office. I want to know, as a listing agent, I want to know when the mortgage is due, when the appraisal is being done. And that's not something usually asked, but the appraisal is a clue that the mortgage is going through. So if you're 2 weeks off of closing and you haven't heard from an appraiser yet, you might want to question why not, and the appraisal, a lot of times they'll put off to the last minute because they got to take the money out of their pocket. So, I mean, I'm annoyingly check with mortgage commitments. I mean, Kevin knows we're both annoying about that.
I'm always
If you
doing
sell one of
follow-up
our
if anyone-
listings. Yeah.
So I know.
If you sell one of our listings, if what you have due, we'll make sure it's due on that date. So, I mean, but it's funny how many people don't do that.
Mhm.
Like, when you have a buyer and like they never ask about the mortgage, like
We're checking the deposit.
checking the deposit, all those things. I mean, those are so many red flags you get along the way in that 6 weeks or so up until the closing.
What do you, Tim? Anything that you
I
do
think
differently?
I've been giving it a lot of thought, and I told a few people, I think in the shifting market, people get more picky with everything. Because they're aggravated, they're paying a higher interest rate than their friend. Their friend's going, I got to, and they're aggravated about everything. And to prevent, right, I always believe in being proactive rather than reactive. Is I'm gonna start talking to sellers to try to get them to do pre-inspections.
That's a great idea.
And I'm gonna upload that inspection online. And then the buyer is gonna have to initial every page of that inspection. They can still do their own, but they can't come back and ask for a credit, what's ready on that
Yeah.
inspection.
But
Yeah.
they already know it's
That's
this.
transparency,
Yep.
right? It's the best seller disclosure that you can have.
Mhm.
So this way, when they get the offer, you're not renegotiating your transaction price.
Yeah, because what's happening now, starting to happen, it's gonna happen, more moving forward is you're gonna sell every house 3 or 4 times and how many times have I said in the last 2 weeks, I walked by Matt in the hallway, like another one down,
2 today.
2 today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but fortunately, and this isn't gonna last, but fortunately, with the deals we've had that have fallen apart, we still have a list of backups because we're dealing with the market, 4 to 6 weeks ago. The one that we had go on today was the only one we had go back on, and we've had to have 3 or 4 of them fall out in the last 4 weeks. But fortunately, you're able to go to those backups. And that's another thing when I started to notice the market shifting, when I started going to those backups, we may have had on one house, maybe we had 5 or 10 backups and 3 of them weren't interested anymore. So now where you might have sold the house for 550, now your best backup is 500. And believe me, that's the best deal to go with.
And here's
That's still
another,
the best.
here's another sign about a shifting market, is when you think of in Wayne, for the longest time, the premier neighborhoods, the Sky Estates, Horizon Heights, they were stagnant. So as the market strengthened, it
Yeah.
started
going all the
trickling
way
up. Now it works the reverse. When you start
Mhm.
seeing the Sky Estates, Horizon Heights, those stately
Start to
neighborhoods
shift.
start to get soft, that then is gonna start trickling down
Mhm.
into the rest of the market.
Yeah, another indicator, for sure. So one final question I have for you guys today, and then with your permission, Lot's permission. Could we maybe take a couple questions from people that are on Zoom or in the audience? Okay. So the last question I have for you guys is, what is the one thing you think our audience needs to be aware of and to consider in a shifting market? Like, if you could boil down, what's the one thing you think is most important?
I think knowledge of numbers and market stats. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Just
with
know
you.
the numbers.
I mean, Tim's Mr. Stat, he's much better than I
Yeah.
am, but yeah, knowing your market and watching, and paying attention to what's coming back on. Paying attention to the price changes we've seen in the last year have been price increases. Now, they're not price increases anymore. Now they're price decreases. Like you pay attention, seeing how much the decreases are. Are they dropping to 5,000 or dropping to 50,000?
No,
Guess
just
what's forward looking is, as Pat said earlier, is the contract date. When did it actually go into contract? Not
That's when the
actually-
game started.
Correct.
Yeah.
good.
And that's what appraisers use too.
Yeah, for their, when they do it, yep.
Yep.
So what I want to do now is I want to open up the floor to our agents. So for those of you listening on Zoom, if you have a question, if you want to either unmute yourself or put it in the chat box, Christina can read that to us. Otherwise, we're waiting for some questions. If you also, there's been a ton of information. So if anyone wants to share an aha, an agent helping agent scenario, so we can get some ahas as well, if there's a takeaway that you get from Pat and Tim. And then to me, ahas are the best way to show that their time is valuable. And I know that there's been a ton of nuggets in today's session. So please, whether that's by sharing an aha in the chat box or unmuting yourself, or by asking a question. Tim and Pat, we got about another 5 to 10 minutes. I'd love to open it up to questions. So Christina, do we have anything?
No, Sal just is showing gratitude and saying that he loves the ideas and he's grateful for the information.
Thank you, Sal. What else? Anyone else want to unmute yourself, or anyone in here have any questions or ahas that they would like to share? Go ahead, Naveen.
And so first of all, you guys are amazing. Thank you for sharing. But what I was really curious about with multiple offer situations, especially as we have newer agents coming in and they're working with some of their first buyers and they're dealing a lot with their clients' frustrations, what's your best advice to give them?
Oh, that's great.
Good question.
I'll give you my best advice.
Yeah.
What Mike and I have done is we actually tell them, look, we're writing special provisions in the contract. Okay, we can put the listing agent's mind at ease, in turn, we'll put the seller's mind at ease. So with your permission, we want your attorney to agree to what we put in here and give us a review letter. So when we present your offer, it's going to be accompanied by the attorney review letter. So the listing agent knows that's not going to get changed during the actual attorney review.
Because it often, to make our offers stronger as buyer's agents, we'll put things in there, like we'll do the inspections in 7 days, we'll do the, deposit within 3 days, and then 9 times out of 10, the attorney review letter comes out with 14 days, 10 days, like.
3
that.
months.
Yeah, yeah, so no, that's important, if you can get your attorney to do it.
And we've had a lot of success with
Mhm.
that because we had an agent in Bergen County said, well, I never saw this before. And they went with our offer because of that attorney review letter.
Because they knew they weren't gonna change the game once it got into attorney.
Because they already had their attorney's letter.
And it's not,
Moving on the language that we put in the contract regarding limited inspections to major structural defect and environmental, waiving of the appraisal, the whole 9 yards.
so the goal is that to ease the agent's mind as far as the listing agent? side
And the
or
seller.
And puts the buyer in a more favorable position to hopefully win that contest. Bidding wars.
Yeah, because because as buyer's agents, we'll put some strong language in there, there's some strong terms in there, and then the attorney changes them. So you were like, if I knew the attorney was gonna change this and this and this, I might not have gone with you.
Right,
yeah.
I would have gone with somebody else. So that's assuring the listing agent and the seller that we're past that hurdle.
It gives you a leg up, right?
Yeah,
What's that in horse racing? Won by a nose?
Oh.
What is it?
Yeah,
So sometimes it's that, it's that
I know what you're
little,
going for.
photo finish.
yeah, there you go.
It's that little bit that puts you over the edge. What I know Pat for many, many years, right? I've negotiated deals on her listing. She's done them on mine. We know our work ethic and our
Mhm.
standards and what we expect that when we say something,
It's
we're
gonna
not
get
gonna go
done.
back on it. It's gonna get done. This is kind of a way of telling the listing agent, hey, whatever we said, it's right here. It's done. You don't have to worry about it being changed.
So I guess a good question is,
we do.
Oh, go ahead.
Maria Topsy, unmute yourself.
Hello, thank you. This is great, all of you. Thank you so much. I'm currently listing a property this week and the sellers want to list it as is. How do you recommend going about that?
is there a reason they want to list it as is, or they just don't want to do repairs?
No, they just don't want to do anything. I mean, the house looks good as it is anyway, but they just don't want to do anything else.
I have an idea.
Home
It's called New
inspection.
York style,
Yeah,
where you gotta understand that all New Jersey real estate contracts are as is anyway. Provisions of the home inspection, and probably no attorneys gonna allow their client, unless it was a cash investor and they know what they're doing, to not have a buyer do an inspection for informational purposes only. So what you can do is you can actually have your seller sign a contract with the agreement. Don't give them a copy, because once you give them a copy, that starts turn review.
Mhm.
With the intent that they have to do their inspections before turn review will be concluded. So they understand they're buying it as is and are not gonna ask for any additional credits. I hope that helps.
yeah, we would love to see the market do that here. To do inspections before. But, also she might want to think about getting a pre-inspection, that way you can go back and you can say, the house has been inspected, there's no known issues, and then.
You can do your own, but you're signing off on our.
Yeah. And you usually pay a little less for than that, Maria, like you usually pay maybe $100 less when the seller does a home inspection as opposed to the buyer.
Okay.
But,
Alright.
if there's nothing jumping out at you. See, I don't know, in the past you put as is and that would be like a red flag that there's something wrong,
Right.
right? I don't like putting that necessarily in there, but we can talk about.
Because
getting
it's in a contract, and all properties are sold as is, with the exception of doing your inspection.
And the truth with the market changing right now, buyer very likely will agree to an as-is sale and then do their home inspection and come back and take another crack at you anyway. Like the good old days, right? So I think it's almost a moot point.
Or we could just, not list it as is, just list it regularly. And then when if they do come back on the inspection with something, the seller can just say, no, we're not doing it, right?
That's it. That's the way it's always been.
But tell your seller, if they don't fix it for that person, they're gonna fix it for someone that's just like them.
Yep, for less money.
Were you gonna say something, Bill?
No.
No, okay.
Thank
What
you.
else?
Just a very.
Thank you, Maria. Who else? Any other questions for Tim and Pat?
Tim, I have a question.
Yes,
In the
sir.
Beginning, you said something about when you're.
Making me look like I was 30?
Yeah, well, that was in the beginning. You said something about when you're negotiating, you had the price reduction sheet in your hands.
Right.
So
in other
negotiating an offer,
In other words, no, like,
maybe I missed.
I'm the listing agent.
Right.
Christina's the seller.
Right.
Pat is bringing an offer. I said, Pat, you're more than welcome if you want to come tonight at 7 or 7:30, whatever better for you. To present your own offer, you can present your offer to the seller. Pat comes and presents her offer to the seller. We're listed at 500. Her offer is at 450. She makes her presentation. I asked Pat, to go outside for a
The
second.
rain, stay on the rain for a couple
And I
minutes.
talk it over with Christine, and I said, well, look, it's not a bad offer, what do you want to do? Well, see if you can get them before 75. Then I would say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if we're going to allow the buyer to buy your house for 475, I think it's a good idea that we let the rest of the real estate community know what you're willing to accept, and then put more pressure on the buyer to accept our capital.
Because now the buyer knows that fear of loss,
More people.
fear of loss. Yeah, if I don't pay 475, they're gonna drop that to 475, then they're gonna get more offers on it.
Makes sense.
Fear of loss.
I love that. That's brilliant.
It took me a while to come up with that.
You know,
No,
I have a question.
Yes.
What do you tell buyers right now in this market? You know, because now, the buyers are under the perception that it changes overnight. Like the house that was 500, oh, I woke up today and it's 400.
I asked, I say, Pat, let me ask you a question. I hope you'll be candid with me. What's the real reason why you want to own?
I'm for my family. I need
So
something
you,
for my
so
family,
you
for
want.
schools. Yeah.
Right? Okay, so real estate has always been a long-term investment.
Mhm.
So we can't predict what it's gonna be 6 months from now or a year from now. If we could do that. With all the rich,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
we can't. So you have to buy the home for the right reasons. And it is a place. The home's a place where you build a lot of memories with your family and friends. And you can't put a price tag on it. But if you're buying it with the intent, I'm gonna make $100,000 in a year, maybe you're buying it for the wrong reason.
Yeah,
And that's what I explained.
yeah.
how long are you gonna live in the house?
And how long are you gonna be there? Yeah, yeah,
I'm not gonna be there long. How long are you gonna be?
yeah.
So,
Good question.
Because I think the buyers, I'm hearing that from buyers already, that the perception is changing.
and I think they appreciate that, and it allows them to really tell you what's on their mind and why they wanna buy.
Through the chat.
Yeah, we have a question that reads, do you have any suggestions for talking to buyers about the rising interest rates?
Yes, more tax deductions for you.
Yeah.
And the good thing about rising interest rates, when they come down, you can always refinance.
Yeah, I mean, again, back to fear of loss, they're going up and they're going up again.
Yeah, but-
You say they're going up another, probably,
Well,
probably.
if you actually break it down, and again, this is where you know your amortization schedule, and you have that little interest rate chart, and you know what the cost is per thousand. So when you know that an interest rate's gone up 0.5%, the borrowed 300,000, and the payment would have been 1,300, and now it went up to 1,350, you break that down into its littlest components. This is what it would be a month. This is what it would
For a
be
dollar a day.
a week. This is what it would be a day. Come on, you can't give up a cup of Starbucks coffee every day. And that's usually what it boils down to. So it's not as bad as people think it is, if you break it down to a small amount.
And we were in a time where, I mean, 60 years ago, well, I was not in business, but I was born. Rates were 5% then.
Yeah, historically. this
And
isn't that bad.
historically, this is not that bad. We just got to
More
this
of a normal
crazy,
market.
it's
Yeah,
normalizing.
We're an abnormal interest rate.
Yeah.
We're at abnormal interest rates, which, I mean, if you're willing to wait another 60 years for them to go back down again, that's good. too.
Oh, God, I wish I had those.
You're only 30.
That's right. That's what the real estate business is.
What else? Any other questions on Zoom or in the audience here?
I had a question for Tim. Tim, I love the role play that you just did, and I don't know if that was on purpose, but I love the way that you speak. And I guess, I remember when you first joined us, you revisited Bill's listing presentation. And as someone who's already seasoned in your real estate experience, I saw that you were revisiting your fundamentals and refining your skills. So both Pat and Tim, is there anything that you'd recommend as far as maybe communicating better or how to practice your
Yes.
verbiage or how just, it's just both of you speak with such
Go to
professionalism.
Goods, get a full length mirror, and you stand in front of that mirror and you watch yourself. Because what you see in that mirror is the same thing that the seller's seeing you. I kid you not, I used to do that. I'm not doing that. I used to do it just to, so you don't come off, how can I say it? Where you're able to articulate your message, where you're not monotone. Okay, I'm gonna list my house at this and I'm gonna, you wanna.
You gotta
No,
be
but-
yourself though.
No,
gotta be
exactly,
yourself.
yeah. But you could be
Yeah.
yourself looking in the mirror.
But it comes back to practice though, too. I mean,
That's what it comes down to.
you know, I know the old expression, Michael Jordan didn't just all of a sudden, shoot free throw, like he was there at three PM, shooting 100.
I think one of the strongest qualities that an agent can have is their sincerity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That you, if you come off sincere, that you are going to be the best consumer advocate that client could ever hire. And that you're there to protect them, to watch over them, to help them and guide them, and you come off sincere, you've increased your chances of getting that listing, right? Pam?
And you know, when you hear that too, how many times have you heard as the process is going through with the seller that you go over and above, like we go over and above, and them say things like, I had no idea how much you did. I had no idea that like for the most, many people that are selling their house have not done this before.
Mhm.
Or haven't done this in 20 years and 40 years, even if you did it 20 years ago, it's changed so much. So like, we know the process so much that it's important to, I mean, for me, we carry them through the process, basically.
Correct. Matt, I just
Yeah.
want to say, for all the people who enjoy working with buyers, learn how to do a buyer consultation. Because you will increase the amount of people that are going to utilize your services. Because no one's doing it. And
Absolutely.
there's buyers out there, they have no clue on what they're doing. I talked to them at open house. You offer them a 1 hour consultation. It doesn't cost them anything. They're embarking on the largest financial decision they're probably making their lifetime.
Yeah, they're
And you-
Googling.
Right, you take them through the whole process, A through Z. You tell them that where a deal most likely will fall apart is during the home inspection phase. I will do that for you. I will do a buyer consultation. If anybody wants the presentation, just change the name. You can use it, but I am telling you, Mike and I, every time we had a buyer consultation, using that formation, we have 100% success rate with setting those people
And
up.
it gets people committed to you. It doesn't, we have them, Kevin has a great buyer's presentation that he made for our team, and it gets people committed, and you don't have to worry about them as much walking into an open house and then, calling you up and saying, hey, sorry, I bought a house this weekend.
Right.
From somebody else. If you put in the work, they're more than likely commit to you. It's gonna be, as buyer's agents, your life is about to get a little bit easier.
And those buyers come out of those consultations saying, I had no idea.
What was
involved."
entailed. Yeah,
Well, and if you don't communicate, they don't know.
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. I think so.
I just want to go back to what you were just saying about standing in the mirror, in front of the mirror. I
They
think,
don't, it doesn't have to be full length.
well, at my height, it wouldn't. I think it's more of believing in what you.
Correct. You know, sincere.
It's not so much the mirror, and I consider, I have the knowledge that you have, but have the personality that I have, I could do just what you're doing.
But
Absolutely.
my
So
problem,
it's-
my problem was I was a very, very shy individual. So I wanted to see what I think it was 24 when I started.
Yeah, I
in
was
real
too,
estate.
yeah.
And back when I started at 24, it was like everybody, I was intimidated by everybody.
Well, we were the kids,
So-
we were the little kids.
So I wanted to try to come off more adult. And the only way I was able to do that was by practicing in the mirror.
And gaining the confidence in
Right.
yourself.
You know? Because the
And-
guy
and
the guy in the mirror didn't talk back to me.
Oh, yeah, you said, well, listen. And what you said about Michael Jordan, and you either are born with it or you're not. I mean, you could take somebody that's gone to every school, knows every script, and just doesn't have the personality to deliver it.
Right.
That's a challenge.
Some people like scripts and some people can read from scripts. I mean, Barack Obama was probably one of the best orators ever, where you could read on teleprompters. You thought he was telling you a story, but he was actually reading. So some people are real good at scripts and making it come off like they're not reading a script. I was talking about that with Pat. I was never comfortable using scripts. It's just who I was. And I had to actually feel it
Right.
come from my heart to make it right. So,
And that's where it's
but
important.
scripts are good for those that can, you know, where they need that
Key of
guidance.
knowing what to say and what not to say. and where you can Just kill it.
Absolutely. So everybody's different. Everybody has to find that who they are, right? How they're gonna present themselves, and we're all different. That's what makes this such a wonderful place. We're all willing to share, right? If every day I get up, I try to learn one thing, which makes me more knowledgeable than the day before. Every day I wake up, I try to bring a smile to a stranger's face, because for that person, at that moment, I made the world a better place for them. It's the little things, right?
Yep.
All right, I'm done.
No, I was just gonna say, I love that, and I just wanna say thank you guys, we're approaching 4 o'clock, so thank you guys for your time. Just overall, just, you know, the collaboration that we're having in these types of conversations, that's what allows us to move some of these conversations forward and then the dialogue forward, because, you know, look, you wake up and things do change, so if you're not having these conversations, you blink and then you open your eyes and it's like a, you know, especially with the summer coming, we talk about this.
Yeah,
You know, a lot of people sometimes tend to have that, oh, you know, it's summer vacation for the kids, this and that. If you shut your eyes and you open them in
you're gonna
September.
wake up in old new
it's a
market.
complete world of the market.
I call it the light switch effect. On, off.
You know,
Just
that's,
that fast.
that's important too, because there's like a handful of people that I'll talk to every day or every couple of days, what he's saying. How many people he's like, what he's saying? Before Tim was here, we'd be talking, what he's saying now.
Yeah.
Mortgage brokers, what he's saying, yeah.
And so it's important to continue to have these conversations. We will be continuing to have this conversation next Tuesday at our sales rally. So please make sure you guys are there. It's the 21st. We're doing an indoor barbecue. That Lisa and Teresa are gonna have something amazing set up for everyone. So next Tuesday at 11 a.m. But more importantly, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Pat, for your knowledge, for your wisdom, for just your, you know, just your collaboration, for lack of a better word. So thank you guys. Please reach out to Tim, Pat, let them know how appreciative you guys are of their time and of their information and their knowledge. Thank you.
And we are equally as appreciative of your time as well.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Pat.
Yes, thank you.
Right.